What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming. And Steve, we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, tell me what you've been playing.
So I've had a lot of time. It's Happy New Year's to everyone. This is our first episode of 2021. So I've just kind of been backlogging stuff. So I started playing the Persona dancing games again.
Oh.
Not for fun, just because I want to platinum those games. So I got the plat for Persona 3 dancing a while ago. I had the platinum for Persona 4 dancing, but on Vita, and the PS4 version has a separate trophy list. So I got that one 2 days ago, and I'm working my way through Persona 5 dancing. I forget whatever it's called, Starlight or Moonlight. On top of that, I have restarted playing Persona 5 Royal, just because that game got pushed on my list of games playing. Last year, it was between like Final Fantasy and Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us. It's like that game was obviously going to take the back burner, especially since it takes like 80 hours. And the way I play Persona games, it's going to be like 120 hours. So I refamiliarized with myself with that, got past that first beginning chunk again, which is like Kamoshida and all that stuff, which I feel like I just did it before. So I got past all that. Luckily, skipping all the dialogue helps just get to more of the new content and more of the better content, in my opinion. That first castle is really weird and takes too long, in my opinion. But so it's still, I will always praise that game. It's that and Persona 4. I just don't know which I enjoy better because I haven't gone back to Persona 4 in a little bit. But maybe after Persona 5, I'll take on that. But we'll see. But besides that, just playing little things here and there. I played a lot more of Sackboy's Big Adventure on PlayStation 5, and that game is still incredible. In a year that we didn't really get a platform, Mario game from Nintendo, between that and Astrobot, it really just kind of hit that sweet spot of chill, relaxing, kind of just platforming, less of a collectathon because it's a little bit more straightforward than that, luckily, not like a Banjo-Kazooie or anything like that. It's definitely more stage based, and I love it. That game is so charming, and I just really like it. I'm glad now I'm seeing more people kind of really get into it, luckily, because I was afraid it was kind of going under the radar. People were talking about Godfall more than Sackboy, and that hurt me a little bit because and I know you love Sackboy just as much as I do. So
definitely.
So I'm glad that he's kind of getting his recognition, some respect on him. So and then besides that, just a whole bunch of fighting games. I just kind of, with this little break from work, thanks to the holidays, I've just been playing tons of Dragon Ball Fighters, King of Fighters 14. I'm trying to get it slowly prepared for King of Fighters 15. I've been playing Jump Force, which is that anime crossover game, which is it's cringy when I play it. I'm like, man, this is really what a game. It's just weird when I see all these fighting people. It's in what world do you have Seto Kaiba fighting Boruto? It's just so weird, and it's just such a weird thing. But I love the game. It's super cheap now too, if anyone ever wanted to get it. But it's just that's kind of my comfort food thing, just because I don't take it serious at all. It's just flashy fun. So that's all I've been doing, just clearing some backlog stuff. I'm playing a little bit of things on Switch again, just kind of No More Heroes. I got a little bit more into Age of Calamity. I don't know what it is that the game's not clicking too much for me. I don't know if I'm just kind of really dying for Breath of the Wild 2. And this game's it's there though, the story's there, and then Zelda is fun, but there's only so much you can play Musou games in chunks. Where I feel like for Breath of the Wild, people were playing, hours at a time, 5-6 hours at a time. I can't do that for Musou games, just because of the repetitiveness of it. But it's there. It's not a bad game. I'm enjoying it. I will slowly get through it. No real rush on it. So that's all I've been playing. Just a little spread out everywhere.
Yeah. So for one thing, I've been playing Cyberpunk, obviously. Mm-hmm. I actually did everything in the game, pretty much. I did every single mission offered. I have every single car. I have not all legendary and epic gear, but pretty close to it. I have max cyberware for everything. I maxed out my RAM. I have some of the best implants and stuff like that. And I've already done multiple endings in the game. But the funny thing is, I'm only capped out at about 50, 52 hours into the game. So I was able to do it in a way less time than I anticipated. So yeah, as of right now, like there's literally nothing else I can do in the game other than maybe keep playing the ending and doing different things to get different endings, because there's 6 different endings. So far, I played the ending twice so far, and I won't tell you which endings I did to avoid spoilers for people who haven't beat it yet. But yeah, no, it's I'm having a lot of fun with it. But as of right now, it's very interesting coming off of Witcher, because 52 hours into The Witcher, you're not even like really scratching that much, to be honest. Like there's like so much in there. But in terms of like Cyberpunk, I've done everything. There's no other quest that I can possibly even do. So that actually really did surprise me, the fact that it's definitely not as content deep compared to like a Witcher that came from obviously CD Projekt Red previously. So we'll see once they add more DLC and stuff like that if it fills out a little bit more. But it is a lot lighter than I anticipated the game being. But everything I've played so far is really, really fun. I was going to tackle all like the police missions and stuff like that, but from what I understand, those auto-generate and stuff like that, so you can actually replicate and play things over and over again as they regenerate. So there's no real motivation to kind of sit there and grind those out, because there's no real progression or anything like that. I thought there was going to be, but there isn't. It's NCPD stuff will come no matter what, and auto-generate. You'll be doing it forever, so I was like, I guess I'm technically done with the game. So for now, I'm probably going to take a break with it, maybe do a couple more things and try to see if I can hunt down some more gear. But for the most part, there's nothing else I can do with the game. Finally, I got a chance to jump into Hyrule Warriors. I only played the demo when that came out, so I never got the chance. I've had the game. I just never got the chance because it took a back burner to pretty much everything else that came out this season. So I was able to jump in there. I'm a couple hours in. So far, I like it. I don't love it, but that particular game style is not something that I love in general. But from what I've played so far, it's pretty fun. I've basically I've done every hero's mission except for Rivali, I believe. I just did Mipha's. Okay, so that's where I'm at right now. I did Urbosa, and I did I forget the larger gentleman's name, but I did all of those, and so I'm about to do Rivali, and I'm not sure how long this game is, so we'll see how long I go. But as you said earlier, it's not something that I could play as like a main game. This is definitely something that is like a good side game for me. So I play a mission or two, about max 45 minutes an hour, and then that's it for me. And then I'll revisit it the next day. So that's kind of how I'm doing it, just playing it in smaller chunks, not something I can binge or anything like that. So yeah, that's everything I've been playing. It's been pretty much split between those games and a little bit of GTA here and there. I put Assassin's Creed a little bit on a pause just so I can take care of some other things. And also I hit a point that is like really annoying for me. So I'm like, I'll get to it at some point. It's a part where like it's literally you're doing like fair games and you have to like race people. And there's one where you basically have to do like a mini obstacle course thing. And it's just really annoying because it's mandatory and it's like a mini game, and I'm like, my time is better suited elsewhere. Yeah. So I looked up you should have saw me Googling. I was like trying to find any way, like, is there any way to skip this? And it's like, no, this game has 360 syndrome, which I don't know if you remember during like the 360 and PS3 years where like these games would just include something stupid. Like, just for no reason, just needlessly difficult things that nowadays would be kind of like side quest stuff that are just mandatory in those games. So at some point I'll get to that, so I'll beat that, or I'll give it to Alyssa to do or something like that. She'll beat it for me, but I'm not sitting there and doing that. So yeah, that's everything I've been playing. It hasn't been a ton, and now I'm kind of just in a waiting period to see what 2021 got for us, but we'll get into that for the loose topic.
Yeah, because it's a packed year, but it's funny because you mentioned the two games that I've been wanting to get back to. Cyberpunk, obviously, I've been wanting to get back to, but I'm in a spot where it's like I could go all in on Cyberpunk, start doing all these side missions, and do that, or go back to Assassin's Creed, which I never completed yet. So I slowly actually did start playing Assassin's Creed. I'm kind of in there doing like some of these, just cleaning up, because I hate
Valhalla, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, Valhalla.
Okay.
When my list looks so full of like side missions that I keep taking, and I'm like, let me clear some of these out. So I've been playing a little bit. Sometimes these missions take a while. Sometimes they're just like some long mission, a lot of traveling and stuff like that. But I still, every time I launch that game, I love it. I do love it. So that's probably the next big game. I'm probably bouncing between that and Persona for a little bit, which is kind of a lot to ask, but but luckily one's on one system, one's on the other, so it's interesting. But I do want to get more into Assassin's Creed, because I know there's a lot more waiting for me on that game.
Well, yeah, I mean, good thing you mentioned it. Actually, that's probably the next place I'm going back to Valhalla, because there's still work I have to do in there. I did a lot of the story stuff, or the main linear plot line, but there is that entire, like, Asgard, Jotunheim stuff that I haven't really touched. I went into it for a little bit, and I was like, I can't do this right now. My encampment needs work. So I'm probably going to go back to that, because that's an entire chunk of the game that I haven't really touched, because of the nature of the story being told there, it was like a little less urgent for me to get through. So yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I'll probably spend my afternoon doing that and going back to that Assassin's Creed, because that one stresses me out a lot less. So I guess we could jump into the first of two stories this week. Again, it's been a slower story, output this time, because it's that weird period. It always happens. The late half of December into the first half of January is always just a super slow time where, like, no real games are coming out. A lot of stories aren't breaking, but Cyberpunk are keeping the lights on over here, and they're paying our bills while we get to talk.
Yeah.
So the first one is a story that it's been a long time coming that I've wanted to talk about this, because obviously I throw a lot of jokes towards this machine. We're obviously talking about the Atari VCS, but I wanted a little bit more information to come out about it before we talk about it, because again, jokes are jokes, but I didn't really actually have too much to say about the console itself, because I didn't really know what was going on. So we have a little bit of progress here so far, but things are still a little bit in limbo with this machine. So let me just give a little bit of information for you guys. So as of right now, the Atari VCS is confirmed to have gotten into the hands of some backers. So as of right now, we saw a lot of material coming out from Atari themselves. Obviously, information about this machine in general has been very scarce, especially compared to machines that you would probably compare it most immediately to, like the Amico, for example. This has been a lot more cagey, and it's missed like a crap ton of dates. That was one thing that the Atari VCS has been plagued with, is date after date after date they've missed in terms of getting consoles into the hands of backers. But as of right now, finally, someone that is not media, or at least their influences, but that is not directly tied to Atari, does have their hands on a console. It doesn't release for everyone until later this year, but we finally got a look at the machine in action from someone other than Atari. So I'm going to link a Twin Blasters review down below, and I think that's kind of like the best look from like a consumer standpoint of what it's like to have this console. And it's obviously a very strange experience for him, because one thing, to get your hands on this console is kind of a bittersweet moment, because nobody expected this to happen, because literally a huge, like 50-50 split, where 50% of people believed that it was a straight like scam, and then the other half like had zero. They wanted to remain optimistic, but we had like no timeline for when this was actually going to come. So he was somebody who his console just showed up, and as of him filming that, like no one else had put any videos up about it. So he felt like he was kind of alone there. So great video. I'm going to link that down below so you guys can check that out. So as of right now, we know that it has a Chrome browser that can be used to stream some games. So I've seen some people running some like Stadia type stuff on the Atari VCS. So somebody was playing Cyberpunk on the Atari VCS.
I did, yeah, I saw that.
It didn't run great, but they were doing it. So it's a fairly content light so far. There's like 2 major Atari Vault collections in there with like 100 games or something like that. So you can have access to tons of like arcade and 2600 stuff. And there is a couple, like, I don't know what you'd call them, like indie-ish type games in there. But yeah, very few people have their hands on the VCS so far. So obviously I've had a lot of jokes about this console, saying that it's a scam, or joking that it's going to be the best console of all time. It's never in between there. It's always one of these two sides with me. And this is a rather expensive device, if I'm not mistaken. You're paying anywhere from $300, $400. So they have a very premium price tag on this machine, as does the Amico and stuff like that. So that's why I kind of have this skepticism about these consoles, because they're kind of like these supplementary alternative consoles with premium price tags, with very, I feel like, niche appeal. So, Steve, as someone who have you gotten the chance to look up this console at all?
So I have, because especially last night when I knew we were going to discuss it, and I started going back, and I was confused for a little bit, because I'm looking at videos and discussions from 2017, and I'm like, no, there's no way it was announced in 2017.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No, that's when it was announced. It was, I think it was under a different name, but anyway, it was there, and I'm shocked because immediately when you think of it, you think almost Nintendo Classic, PlayStation Classic, which are these smaller. I think Sega did their Genesis Classic and stuff.
Like a plug and play consoles.
A plug and play collection of the old stuff, And I'm like, oh, that's interesting because Atari is like in a weird spot, especially since some of those games no one wants to play them right now. But then I started seeing like how it's gonna be Linux based, and they're hoping. And my thing is they're always hoping. They're like, oh, we hope to get this rolling, and we hope to have the different things just working correctly. The software they want it to be, besides like the preloaded games on it, they want it to be able to go forward and stuff like that with some of the streaming stuff, which is weird, and that's what led me to watch that guy playing Cyberpunk on it. Yes, it ran terrible, but it's interesting. Like it's almost like a half step, and besides most of the jokes that I heard you tell, which it's been I don't know episodes now that you've thrown slight shade over at Atari VCS, but it just all does look very mismanaged, because this was supposed to release, I want to say March in 2020. They said they had a delay due to COVID-19. I think the original pre-orders were supposed to happen in 2018, and the pre-orders had to be delayed just because they knew they weren't hitting the strides right. They had the weird like 3-tier pricing. They have it was like a $200 Onyx, and then like a collector's edition, and then
like a founder's edition,
founder edition for $400. And it's like you're looking at the specs, and it's like, okay, but what's this machine supposed to do? And that's my biggest thing is it doesn't, in my opinion, and obviously this is just my opinion, it doesn't look like something. Like, sure, if I just had money to throw away, I would buy it just for the lulz, but it just doesn't seem like something like retro people are gonna like super go after, and it doesn't seem modern enough, especially with some of this pricing, for other people to get. On top of that, they're just not available. People don't know what this is, so it's in such a weird spot, and it just reminds me so much of Ouya, and that was a dumpster fire that mostly everybody called. There's a lot of people for some reason believed in Ouya, and I just remember seeing Ouya's in Target for like $20, and I wish I would have picked one up then.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's killer, and I feel the same every time I see this. I feel the same, and then they talk about, they're like, oh, we're looking at the failure of Ouya as inspiration, and I'm like, yeah, but you guys aren't really learning, from my opinion. You're missing dates. I feel like when this releases, you're gonna be missing features, because they're talking storage and upgradable to a terabyte of storage, and it's like
controller support online. Like, it's a whole thing of things it doesn't do.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't get it. And then it's like, so what I'm like, it's just I don't get it. So then when I see their control input, and it's the joystick or the modern, whatever they call it, their modern control, which just looks like a 360 control slightly, and it's just like, I don't get what this is for. I'm very, very confused. It's just, it doesn't look like a well thought out product. It looked like they saw the success of these classic systems, and they're like, we can do something a little bit different. Let's not do a specifically classic collection, because I guess I don't know, Atari's, as a known name, it's not going to really hit with like the younger generation, I guess, or whatever. But I feel like this is completely just falling apart. And then the same where I was trying to look for videos, I'm like, who has this? And very few people have it, and it's just like, and the people who do have it, they're just like, I don't know, they're so weird about it. They're like, oh, there's 500 that were produced in like May, and then didn't ship out till like July, and then it's just super confusing, and it's just super just mismanaged, and it's danger written all over it, because I just don't think any messaging is being clear. Like, what is this gonna do, and for who?
Yeah, I mean, you raised kind of great points, and that's the kind of like my main confusion about it. First off, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, because I know some people are excited about this machine, and so the most we can say is it's not for us. But what I will say is I'm really confused as to what the appeal is of a 2600 emulator with like a Chrome browser and medium PC specs. Like, I just don't know. Yeah. Like, why anyone would buy this. Okay, I would get this if you bought this, because I kind of want this just because I feel like in 20 years it's going to be really funny to have because they're going to be like impossible to find because these are not going to sell a lot. So they're not going to produce a lot. And so they're going to be hard to find everywhere. And it's really interesting gaming history. So that's kind of why I want it. I think the console itself actually looks pretty good. Like, I love the wood grain finish of the original 2600 and stuff like that. So I like the look of this console with the LEDs and stuff like that. The new joystick with the little LED circular thing is actually pretty cool. The obvious, like, more pro controller-esque type thing is very obviously designed after the Xbox controller. So I'm not mad about, like, it from, like, a hardware perspective. I'm just curious as to, like, for someone who's really genuinely excited about the VCS, I'm just curious as to, like, well, what is it about it that really gets it going for you? Like, what is the original offerings and exclusive offerings that the VCS offers for that price that justify it? You know what I mean? But it's one of those things that, for again, because of how mismanaged it was, I couldn't help but feel that it's a Kickstarter scam. Not a scam as in the way that it's like, oh, we're going to take your money and run with it. It's more so like, we're going to take your money and it's like, take your money now and figure it out later. It's not something that I felt like they had a clearly thought out plan and stuff like that. And this is kind of just been the story of this console from the beginning. And again, I understand some people are optimistic. I spend a lot of time reading about stuff in the retro community. And from what I see about the retro community, it's very split on stuff like this. And I say stuff like this because I feel like the Amico is in the same boat in terms of, at least just from a perception standpoint, where a lot of people are asking, like, what is the point of this? Because, again, obviously, some people like to play on original hardware. People who don't like to play on original hardware. There are collections of these consoles that exist on pretty much every other console. Like, 2600 games are not hard to find emulation and collections of pretty much everywhere. I'm pretty sure you could find 2600 Vault collections very similar to the ones on the VCS on Steam if you really wanted to play. You could run those things on literally anything. Those games, obviously, as legendary as they are, don't have a lot of, like, they didn't age the best. So it's for people who are really interested in, like, gaming as an archival or a historical standpoint. Absolutely would have something, obviously, if they had nostalgia for that. But the average consumer who's like, oh, I'm curious to see where this franchise was at one time. There's, like, no franchises that go back to, like, 76 to 79, to anything pre-Crash to, like, 83 and stuff like that is a little tougher to go back to. So, yeah, it's just, I try to remain optimistic and open-minded, but at the same time, like, I don't know what to do with this machine. So it's like, part of me feels bad for doing all the jokes because I know, hey, the console exists. And some people who have gotten their hands on it are like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And, when they're playing some of these arcade games with some of the effects, it looks cool. It looks fun if you like those games. I like me some Missile and stuff like that. Like, I like Centipede. Like, yeah. there's some fun games on there. But at the same time, it's just like, why did this console justify the 3-4 year incubation cycle of just, like, ambiguous back and forth dates? Is it going to come out? Is it not going to come out? Like, did this all lead up to something great? In my opinion, no, not really. But again, it hasn't technically been fully released retail wise yet. So at the same time, I have to technically bite my tongue and hold for the formal release to actually render full judgment on it. And honestly, if I can get my hands on a VCS for a decent price, I'm 100% going to go for it. But I'll be damned before I spend no $400, $300 on this console. Are you crazy? That's my one hang-up.
Crazy thing. Like, maybe if I whatever they was looking at the list, the Onyx edition or whatever is $200. I'm like, see, but like maybe, but even then, but like, look, I'm on Steam right now. They have something called Atari Vault, and it is 100 classic Atari 2600 games.
Yeah, so it's the exact same thing.
Take a guess.
How much? $5.
So right now, yeah, it's on sale for $5.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Without the sale, $9.99. Yeah.
So in those, I'm pretty sure I put money down there. That's the exact collections that they're offering on the VCS.
That's my thing. Like, looking at the, it's 100 games, but you have Asteroids, and then you have it in the 2600 version and the arcade version. Centipede, both versions. You have Gravatar, Haunted House, Lunar Lander.
Okay, so they got the
bunch of soccer, baseball, not a bunch, but
so they got the hits pretty much. So everything you want to play.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, so what is the VCS offering? You know what else has a Chrome browser? Like a laptop. You know what also has Bluetooth controller support? Like a laptop. Why not just get like a Chromebook? It would do the same exact thing that the VCS is doing as of right now, unless I'm super missing something.
That's my thing, and I just feel like it's gonna end up being the Ouya ended up being a emulator machine. Let's be honest, people just emulated stuff. I saw people playing PS1, N64 games and stuff like that, and that was a pretty weak piece of hardware. And I just feel like that's where this will go. People will use it to just emulate other stuff, especially when anytime a system kind of releases like in this half Android based kind of space, that's what ends up happening.
Well, yeah, that's just a really expensive way to turn something into a Raspberry Pi, though. That's like my main thing.
That's true. You could also just get a Raspberry Pi.
That will do, if that's what you're using it for, and you're just like, I want to play Metal Gear Solid, but then it's like, I got something for you. They've gotten the Dolphin emulator to run on a Raspberry Pi before, so how about look into that?
Yeah.
But again, I'm not pushing piracy, and I understand, like, if it's like, hey, I grew up with Atari, I love these games, they're very nostalgic for me. New 2600 looking device, I'm with it. I 100% understand that. That's cool. Well, first off, this Atari is not like the original Atari. Obviously, the name moves around. The name and versus like IP ownership, things move around. People buy out things, so these are not literally the same team that was working on the 2600. Mm-hmm. But I understand that 100%. I mean, hey, I have a little mini Game & Watch over there, so it's not like I'm exempt from doing that. I understand that, and I don't necessarily have a ton of nostalgia for the 2600. So obviously, I'm coming at it from a different perspective. I just worry about this machine and all these people who pumped like serious money into these machines and into these Kickstarters, like hundreds of dollars, and like they get this, and after all that time they're like, hey, it's a work in progress, we're working on stuff, and it's like, what have you been doing all this time? Like looking at like the motherboard and then just like the way everything was designed and the console itself, and it's like, that's what took you all this time? Like, okay. But again, I'm going to keep an open mind. It might not sound like it. It might sound like I'm being very negative. But this is me with an open mind for a device that I don't see the necessity of its existence. So it's about as like optimistic as I can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unless this comes and blows us away by storm, I just don't see.
Could happen.
And it could. You never know. It's just I don't see it. It may just not be for me. Alright, so let's get on to the next story, which is a continuation of everyone's favorite drama of 2020.
Hashtag Jarrell was right. Was I not? I did call this last week.
So, Cyberpunk, a new lawsuit has been filed. Surprising no one, really. So, a second class action lawsuit has been filed against CD Projekt Red from the Shaw Law Firm, but this time it's on behalf of the shareholders, which is exactly what you called. The law firm says the following. According to the complaint, the company made false and misleading statements to the market. CD Projekt's hotly anticipated video game, Cyberpunk 2077, was essentially unplayable on current-gen Xbox and PlayStation consoles due to an overwhelming number of bugs and other problems. Sony, Microsoft, and the company were forced to offer refunds to customers who bought Cyberpunk 2077, resulting in Sony removing the game from its PlayStation Store. The company's reputation was harmed significantly by the botched, my favorite word, launch of Cyberpunk 2077. Based on these facts, the company's public statements were false and materially misleading throughout the class period. When the market learned the truth about CD Projekt, investors suffered damages, and then you can join the case to recover your losses and stuff like that. So this is, obviously, we knew this was going to be the pinnacle of this stuff. It was all really building, especially the second that Sony had to, pull this off their market and stuff like that. I'm like, well, this is going to be a bigger deal, because especially that PS4s are in the wild like crazy, and now that the game's essentially unpurchasable on the PlayStation software right now, unless you go to a brick and mortar, which thanks to the pandemic most people aren't doing. And all these places have warnings and stuff like that. We knew this was coming, obviously, to the point that a lot of these people are admitting that the shareholders were misled, which is illegal. You can't misrepresentate your product. You can't misrepresentate your company. And to the point, I mean, it is what it is. And as much as we love CD Projekt Red and we think all the people are hardworking over there, there were the higher ups and people who were misleading and straight up lying. They were just straight up lying that the game was going to run well, that the game was working well, the game could work on the last gen, especially the launch last gen version of the consoles. When again, I don't have a way to play it on those things right now, but I only imagine what it is to play those games on there. And so I know this wasn't any surprise to you because we discussed this, but what was a little bit of your reaction for this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was like an unfortunate, but I felt like inevitable evolution of what these lawsuits were going to eventually pop up. I do think it's important to note, and again, I'm not a legal expert or anything like this, but the lawsuit's been filed and it's a class action lawsuit. I don't know if any shareholders have actually come forward to join it though. I don't know. So I know as of right now, they're kind of seeking out and soliciting shareholders from CD Projekt Red, being like, hey, if you felt like you've incurred a lot of damage from this, come join our lawsuit. And then obviously the more people who join, the efficacy kind of goes up, and we'll see what it rules in their favor. And again, it's going to be a lot of settlements and stuff like that. Ultimately, people just want their money. And if they felt like they took their hit on that, they just want to be paid. So we'll see how CD Projekt Red kind of deals with all these things. But again, I don't know if any investors have actually even joined this class action lawsuit. This is just something I've seen been filed. I went onto the Shaw Law Firm website to kind of see what information they had on there, and it seemed like a relatively new thing that they put in there. So we'll see if anything actually happens of this. I mean, I feel like for right now, this is probably going to be kind of the last development we see related to some of the law side of what's happening with them. Until, because law proceedings take time, and it's gonna be some time before we see a formal ruling. Who knows? This could go into like arbitration and be settled between the parties on the side outside of a courthouse. So that's a possibility of the way things can play out too. So there's lots of different outcomes I could see happening of this situation. I hope everybody is able to come out on top, because ultimately I think CD Projekt Red specifically, whoever was in charge of the higher-ups and pushing these timetables and stuff like that, really dropped the ball and put them into a bad situation. But at the end of the day, this is just a video game that was obviously pushed out way too fast. And ultimately, I would like to see the vision that they had for this game actually be actualized, as opposed to, CD Projekt Red go out of business and this end up being like a Telltale situation where this game just goes into limbo and pulled off the digital story. That's what I'm not interested in seeing happening, and that would be disastrous for them. And so I'm just hoping that they're able to settle what they have to settle. Unfortunately, a lot of players put money into this game and were not able to play this game on the hardware that they have, so hopefully they all get their money back. They are able to get the time that they need to actually finish this game, whether that be into Q2, hopefully not into Q3, and then they're able to not necessarily re-release the game, but kind of release the updates and the DLC drops and everything that they intended to be in the game. They can finally put it out, and then maybe that experience could have kind of a silver lining where it's like once everybody's able to actually get into the game, they're like, actually no, but I do like this game. It was really messed up launch, but this is a really fun game, and I just hope people can actually experience it, because so many people are not even able to render an opinion on the quality of the story or the quest or anything like that, because just the performance is so out of pocket. Yeah. So that's a real shame that like there's so many people who don't even have an opinion on whether they think this game is a 7, an 8, or 9, because they can't even like play the game. And that is a very unique position that this game is, and that we haven't really seen too much before, where there's been games that have come out that have been very lukewarm received, that didn't run too well, but never one that I feel like there's a pretty wide discrepancy on people's experience, where like some people are able actually to run this game and they're having a really good time with it, and then there's people who can't even like render a judgment. And so that's a really bad position for them to be in, and I'm just hoping that ultimately they can kind of pull through this situation. Again, we've seen rough situations happen to these companies before, but I don't know if like Hello Games was being sued necessarily. So I felt like there was, again, a very active disinformation campaign happening by some of the higher ups at this company that was like all damage control. And when you're deceiving people financing the operation, that is disastrous for you, and that's always going to end bad for you, because you're playing with people's money. Yeah. So ultimately, we'll see. Again, I'm hoping that this is the last Cyberpunk story for a little bit, to give them a little bit of a rest, so we can talk about some other things. But I mean, hey, this is the age of Cyberpunk right now.
Yeah, I mean, what the fact that I release around nothing else is what really gives that shine. But hopefully, the next story, next time we discuss it, will hopefully probably be after the first January like giant patch and the February one. So hopefully it's positive stuff, that it's way more stable on certain consoles and stuff like that. But let's hopefully we don't have to discuss it again. The negatives anyway. I'll if it gets fixed, I have no problem discussing the greatness that is hidden underneath all the bugs.
Yeah, because from a technical level aside, like, I actually really do enjoy the game itself. And the funny thing is, for me personally, my favorite part of the game is less tied to the actual story of the game and more just the random side quests you bump into. Because there are some really, like, emotionally impacting side quests that you just bump into that are really... I think, like, maybe, like, Regina gives you a call and it's like, hey, I need you to take care of this job, and then you go into a building, and then you just... It's a quick thing. It's no more than 5 minutes, but those are way more impactful and way more tell me about this world than anything about this whole, like, giant Arasaka story, which I think is also very good, too. So, again, there's a lot of great things underneath a really flawed kind of engine and performance that they kind of set up for the game, and that I just hope that they can move past that so more people could start talking about this. And again, we maybe have something closer to a No Man's Sky where, like, it had a really messed up launch and a lot of people got turned off to the game, but people who stood loyal with it and later adopters got to experience something really, really nice. So that's what I'm hoping for them, at least at this point.
Yeah, the same, because like you were saying, there's so much good in there. The main story is decent. I think it's actually... Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I would say it's pretty good with the whole.
I think it gets better.
But the side stuff is actually where it gets, especially when we start going to some of the flashback stuff with. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. The stuff that happens with Rogue and Johnny Silverhand and
Carrie. I don't know how deep you got into
and Carrie. Everything that happens, and there was even some funny moments, like the whole when you go to the movie theater or the drive-in.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to not spoil, but that was a really funny scene to me. I thought that was really fun, the way I thought it was going completely one way, because this game doesn't have any embarrassment, but then it goes a completely different way. And then you see the relationship and what it really is between your character, Johnny Silverhand, and the people who in your past, his past. That's the stuff that's really, I think, the bread and butter of this game.
Yeah, and there's entire characters that play very little role in even any contribution to the main story that I think are really, like, solid storylines as well. I'm thinking about, like, Claire, for example, and the whole racing storyline. I'm thinking about, like, River and his nephew. So there's lots of different things that happen in this game that have no connection to the storyline that are, for me, really make the game and really fill out this world in a certain way to get that real, like, cyberpunk grimy experience in there, where there's a lot of great stuff in there. So fingers crossed, hopefully something arises a little bit better out of this.
Yeah.
So I guess we can finally move on to our loose topic. So last week we talked about our favorite games of 2020, and we finally were able to wrap up the year. So now starting into the year, the natural evolution of that is the 2021 games that we're most looking forward to. And so we both kind of put together some, like a list of different games that we're looking forward to talking about. So we're going to kind of throw games back and forth and, discuss what we think about them and why we're excited about them and what we're hoping from them. And maybe you can mention some games. We can mention what we want from any of the big three and what we think is coming from them. So there's lots of different angles we could tackle this. So I guess I can start with one that I'm really excited for, and that is Far Cry 6. It did get pushed off, so that's unfortunate that it's going to be a little bit before we get to play it. But the game looks phenomenal. I forget the actor's name, but he's like
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes, he is a legend, first off. Just every role I've seen him in, whether it's The Boys, Mandalorian, Breaking Bad, he murders every single role. And so I'm just super ecstatic to see him finally in a video game, and specifically in this role. He plays a bad guy so good. And specifically, like, this kind of almost, like, corporate buttoned up schemy bad guy, not like a traditional, like, Darth Vader. Yeah, he plays this other political type guy so well that I'm really excited to be able to see this game. I want to see it running on next gen hardware. I loved Far Cry 5. I know some people have, like, mixed feelings about what they did with that, but I'm just a big fan of where the franchise has gone since then. I'm excited to to mess around in this world. I believe it takes place in South America, and there's a whole like color palette that they're using on the marketing, that like reddish and orange undertones of it, that I think is going to be really, really awesome. And the cool thing is, obviously with the red thing, they're kind of playing around with a lot of themes of kind of like South American communism, specifically of like the 60s to 80s. So they're playing around with some really interesting themes there that I'm excited to see how they go. Well, now obviously Far Cry does have a tendency to introduce really heavy themes and then kind of underexplore them. That is something I know the franchise does. So I'm not expecting for them to all the way go there, but I'm expecting like a really fun experience. So are you excited about this game at all?
Oh, absolutely! I cannot wait for this. I've been a fan of Giancarlo since the. Sorry, I don't know why my phone's activating. Since I mean, you're the one who introduced me to Breaking Bad and told me to watch it and stuff like that.
Did I?
Yeah,
I forgot that.
Him as Gus, it was fantastic. Him in The Boys is fantastic, and the fact that he plays a villain that doesn't lose composure, in a sense,
that's it.
Is what I really can't wait for. Even in the beginning, the teaser announcement trailer with him calmly giving, I don't know if that's supposed to be his son, but the boy that's with him the grenade and stuff like that. Just his composure is what I can't wait for. Where we've had the villains are always kind of what speaks to me in the Far Cry games. You mean in Far Cry 3 you had Voss, who was a psychopath. And he's the main. I know he's not he ends up being not the full boss, but Voss was the villain. I don't care about that other guy. And then Far Cry 4, that guy was pretty interesting. He was too much like Voss.
Something like that.
Yeah. And then Far Cry 5, we had this weird spiritual, the father, the way he was, and I'm like, I just like, and the family and the way that was structured. So then you have Giancarlo. I don't think they've given his character a name yet, but. You can tell he's going to be a very strategic, and from the trailer you can tell it's very guerrilla soldier fighting and stuff like that, and the tropical paradise sort of feel to it. I just can't wait. And the gunplay is always really solid. I can't wait to experience this. This was probably the delay that hit me the hardest, where I was like, I really wanted to play Far Cry. I love my Far Cries, but I was like, if this gives it more time to be really good, especially on the newer gen, I don't even know where I have it pre-ordered. I think I have it pre-ordered on Xbox. I usually get these games on Xbox. It just makes me really excited to get into this game.
So what you got?
So one I have on my list, Ghostwire Tokyo. So this is the new game from the developers from The Evil Within, and at first I thought it was like a weird horror game, pretty much the way. Obviously, you think the guys who made Evil Within, you're thinking horror. And so when we saw the newest trailer, which was a while back, we really see that it is, it's nuts. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. The combination of like magic, the martial arts, and like the combat that you fight ghosts that are occupying the city. It's way more fast paced, very first person. It's first person, which is a different exposure than the Evil Within was. So I'm excited to see with that. I was worried because there was a lot of after the game was announcement, there's a lot of structure shifting with that company and stuff like that, which was a little weird. I wasn't sure what was going on with that, but I'm excited for it just because of how it looks smooth, but it also just looks so bizarre. And I mean, we ended up playing a game where you're literally just the delivery man in Death Stranding, so the bizarre stuff doesn't scare me anymore. How about you? Any interest in Ghostwire?
Definitely. I love all and I believe I understand the game that you're talking about. It's kind of like that first person looking game with all like the Japanese supernatural imagery. That's the one, right?
Yeah, it's the Tango Games in Bethesda.
Yeah. So I remember that. Yeah, that game looks awesome, and I actually completely forgot about that. And I forget her name, but she was the one who went on stage and did that little dance too. So I love when they kind of
and then immediately left the studio.
Yeah, so I was like, what is going on there? But this game looks really, really awesome. I completely forgot about that. And do we have a timeline for that? Do you remember?
I think it's just 2021.
Okay.
I do believe it's a PlayStation 5 and PC exclusive.
Oh, okay. Look at that. I didn't know that.
Because it's one of those weird caught in the between Bethesda stuff, but.
Oh yeah. So that's a very interesting one. Yeah, I can't wait for that game, and we'll see how that one rolls out. And again, Tango Gameworks, very, very talented team. Evil Within, really, really amazing games. I feel like really underrated games too as well. So I hope this one can kind of get people to put them in that conversation, because at this point they put out multiple really, really quality games I feel like have kind of gotten overlooked. Especially when people start talking about like modern horror, they don't really throw their names into there. And for some reason, people are like throwing names into there that are like way older titles. Like people are throwing around like games like Outlast and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, Evil Within like absolutely killed it and was holding it down for a little bit when not many people were doing survival horror. It was before this little Resident Evil resurgence thing that we're on right now.
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I hope this game really, really does well for them. And I'm definitely going to jump into that. There's no doubt about that.
Exciting times. What do you have next?
So speaking of survival horror, I guess I have to mention Resident Evil Village. Whoa, Alexa.
Oh my god, sorry. I don't know what... all my technology is going wild. See, I speak of technology and
It's the
Ghostwire,
ghost.
and everything's going nuts in here.
It's the ghost. Okay, yeah, so Resident Evil Village I wanted to mention.
Of course.
So we don't have a ton of information about like what this game is. Again, Resident Evil is very... I wouldn't say hit or miss, but obviously they have a splintered fan base that want different things from them. And so I hope that this game can kind of appease everybody because I think this is the closest we've seen to being able to do that. So obviously the remakes went really, really well. 3, not so well, but some people still really like it. I think there's still a quality game underneath there. Obviously 7 was amazing. And so coming off of that, they seem to be running it in the style of 7, but with some of the environmental choices that we haven't seen probably since 4. So that is what is really exciting about this game, and I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunities and potential in this game. And so it's one of those things that's like, hey, all they need to do is deliver. Just go across that finish line because everything else about it so far is perfect from what I've seen about the visuals. For me at least are really resonating with me. The gameplay style, they're keeping the style from 7, which I preferred the third person style, but the first person style is still really solid and the gunplay is still really solid in there. So I think they can really deliver on this and have one of the better Resident Evils in quite a while, as long as they don't pull any last minute weird stuff. So I know you're excited about this.
Yeah, so we all know I'm Capcom fanboy number one here. So yeah, I'm obviously super excited as someone who was very I was very unsure of Resident Evil 7 when I got it, but I still bought it day one. Played most of it in VR. It was terrifying. But I really enjoyed what they were doing. I always kind of took it as like a semi-soft reboot or expanding in one aisle. I never played the DLC that puts Chris Redfield in it, besides in the spoiler, I guess he's in the ending of Resident Evil 7. But they did a DLC that I never played that I guess connects it even more. And obviously this continues off that with him in the game with the main character from 7 and Ethan, I want to say his name was.
Yeah, that's it.
In there. So I can't wait to see the real like unity of what is Resident Evil, because they're obviously going to take the influences that they got from 2 and 3 remakes, obviously aesthetic wise, and then but definitely they're focusing on enhancing more of that stuff that Resident Evil 4 had, that people loved. People really love talking about Resident Evil 4. I mean, the game's called Village, which is a big thing that in Resident Evil 4 people absolutely loved. So I can't wait for it. That's a day one purchase for me. That's a take a day off from work almost kind of game for me. I guess depending when it releases, I don't think we have a tied down specific date, but I can't wait for it. And then Capcom's usually really well when like coming to like cross-genning stuff. So from my understanding, Resident Evil 8 as of right now still just a next gen thing. I think they were saying they were looking at possibility of doing a previous gen. I think stuff like Cyberpunk's gonna probably deteriorate them from doing that, and just focus on releasing a really good quality game somewhere. Some people
RE engine is legendary.
And that RE engine's great. They already have experience with it thanks to Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition. So it's going to be an exciting time. So at least they're not completely unaware of what to do on that.
Yeah, I can only imagine how this game's going to look. Like on like a PS5. Like, oh my god.
I can't wait. That's it's one of the I just can't wait. I hope it comes out soonish. They're probably going to hold it off for October, Halloween, and hit all that stride perfectly.
Yeah.
So the next game I have, I guess keeping on this sort of horror theme, isn't necessarily announced for 2021. It was pushed out of 2020, very early on in 2020, which is weird. So Dying Light 2, this is Techland's
what is going on with that game?
Sequel to Dying Light. Obviously, this game, there's something going wrong at the studio. I know there was a lot of issues because like some of the writers were accused of sexual misconduct and kind of abusive stuff like that. And so they were let go of the studio. I don't know if that had specifically anything to do with it. Remember, this game was announced, or this game was scheduled to release in 2020, and I want to say like January 2020, like right at the beginning of the year, they immediately booted it out of the whole year, which is a super strange move, because I don't think it had a date for 2020. It just like New Year's happened and they're like, yeah, the game's not going to be ready this year at all. And that worries me because I really enjoyed Dying Light. Everything about the game was really fantastic. I really loved the way that the whole game was kind of reinvented a little, not reinvented, but really re-experienced the way the horror was, and running around at night and the zombies in the building and keeping the human like enemies just as powerful as the zombies and stuff like that. But the aesthetics of it, the parkour nature of it was really exciting, and I really want this game. It's been like 5 years now since the sequel, since the first one. But obviously, I think there's a lot of stuff to be worried about. They've been super quiet about it. They canceled their medieval game, their medieval like themed game for this. So it's just strange. So as excited as I am for this, I'm really worried just because we're getting zero information and we don't know what's going on. Like, they're being so quiet and it's worrisome, unfortunately. Are you into Dying Light at all?
Oh, I loved the first one.
Yeah.
And specifically that DLC, the following they put out with it too. Yep. Again, that was such an impressive game in that nobody really expected it to be as good as it was. And it was one of those things where it's like you see what was happening before Dying Light with the whole Dead Island thing.
Yeah.
And then you see what happened after it with this whole Dying Light 2 thing. And it's like, was Dying Light maybe the anomaly? Like, it was just never meant to be so good, and then they lucked out and got something good, because it's like they had a very tumultuous how do I be nice? Things were really rough for them before Dying Light, obviously. Yeah. And then since then, it's pretty much gone to about as much dysfunction as there was before. I mean, there's still people floating around the idea that the next Dead Island's still coming out. Like, they're still saying that.
Yeah, Dead
so,
Island.
like, that's how dysfunctional that IP is.
Yeah.
And so, it's like one of those things that's like, I want nothing more than for this to come out and be excellent, like I think. But it's like, the more time that passes, the more worried I get, and the more... Eventually it turns from like, okay, Doom, for example, had a really troubled development cycle, so did God of War and stuff like that. But these games came out and were excellent nonetheless. But there's eventually a time and threshold where it passes, where it's been in development for so long that, first off, whatever you put out is going to feel outdated. First off, it's going to look like a game that's been in development for 5-6 years. And then on top of that, it's like... you eventually hit a point where it's like, it's more likely that this game might be canceled, if anything, and then kind of go into the vaporware category. So I really hope they're able to deliver something with that. And I need a doc or an article, or Jason Schreier, get on that or something like that, because I need to know what happened with this game, because the first one was so good, the DLC went so smooth. Like, there's no reasons why in like 2 or 3 years after that, a second one should have rolled out with relative ease, and things shouldn't have been messy. It was a beautiful game. It ran really well, so it's not like they need to optimize the engine really crazy. So I don't really know what happened with this IP, but it's got me sweating a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately. I feel like it's going to ruin it for me.
It ruined it before it starts. I mean, we only got one game. Okay, so my next one is one that nobody's really talking about since it got announced, but I'm excited for it at least. Gotham Knights. So that's obviously the next direction that the Arkham series is going on. People waited for the longest to see what was happening with the next Batman game. Oh, Rocksteady, what are they doing? They told us everything they're doing, and then everybody's like, okay, anyways. And then they turn away, and I'm like, guys, like, there's great DC games coming out. Suicide Squad is going to be a really long time before we were able to play that. But Gotham Knights, I mean, to me, looked excellent. It wasn't running the best, but... I can't wait to go around Gotham playing as, different people in the Bat family and stuff like that. So, not much to say about it other than that I'm really, really excited. I know I'm a DC fanboy. I love me some DC, and the Arkham games are flawless. So I can't wait to jump into basically an Arkham game with other members of the Bat family that I really, really like. So, yeah, that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, obviously I'm with you on this. I am really excited for this. It was worrying because, we didn't know what Rocksteady was doing. We also weren't sure what W Games Montreal were doing. I'm glad they got another shot at this because Montreal did Batman Arkham Origins, but people for some reason ignore that game, which is weird because that game is actually really well. I don't know why they treat it that way, and they're kind of giving it the same in Gotham Knights, where this is not connected to that universe, which is it bothers me. Don't know, but I guess they're playing with it. It is what it is. I can't wait to be playing Nightwing, Batgirl, Red Hood, and I think Robin is what's confirmed right now.
Yes.
And so I can't wait for that. I think using the Court of Owls for that is going to be really interesting, especially because they're so tied in with Batman later on, and Batman in this universe is dead.
Yeah.
So it's exciting, and I mean this is the game that's been teased for I can't even remember how long they've been teasing the Court of Owls stuff. So I'm excited to finally hopefully get my hands on that. It's been long enough.
For sure.
Yep. Another game that's on my list that we've been waiting, I want to say it's like 15 years between Psychonauts 2, Double Fine Psychonauts. So I want to say it's like
I swear I did.
Yeah, it should have, and then it was delayed. I think it was delayed out of 2020. So it's, I want to say this was announced in like 2015 and stuff like that, and it was supposed to come out in like 2018. But I don't know what's been going on with this double. This is another thing that's kind of been in the mix-up. I know that, Microsoft acquired them, but this is still coming out on PlayStation systems from my understanding. That's what they said, at least, that they were still coming out. This is when Microsoft was doing that buy stuff. Psychonauts has always just been kind of that quirky, weird, I've always compared to like Camp Lazlo looking, game. It's pretty much, a camp for psychics and stuff like that, and was the first one, and it's interesting. And it's one of those games where we don't really get Double Fine sequels. This is kind of one of those things that's like, I want a Psychonauts 2. I never thought in any circumstance I was actually going to get a Psychonauts 2. I'm worried because we haven't seen much, though. We haven't seen really what's going on. I know some of the voice actors have been able to come back, but Tim Schafer's been pretty quiet on this until, I want to say the last time we heard anything was the, acquisition with Microsoft, and then it's just been kind of radio silence and delays. So it does worry me. I think the game may not just be what people are hyping it up to be. It's hard to make a sequel 15 years later and have it really hit the same audience.
Yeah, Psychonauts for me is very close to the way I kind of look at Oddworld, which is I know it's like super, super loved and really, really good games, but I didn't play it a lot growing up, so I don't have the nostalgia for it. So like my modern brain has a really hard time like connecting to it, you know what I mean? Like Psychonauts, like I played Psychonauts, but I played Psychonauts like once I was way older. So I was kind of like, okay, it's good, I like it, but then like some people are like, no, we need the sequel. So I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah. I hope it comes out. I hope it's really good. It would be a real shame to have a disappointment after all this time, because I know how that can be, where you just wait for forever for something and then you get Kingdom Hearts 3. So I know how that feeling could feel. So I'm praying that this game delivers, because I know how long people have been waiting for this. Yeah. So I guess I could talk about my next one. I don't have a lot to say about this. I just want to throw this out there. This is a morbid curiosity. I don't necessarily even think this game might be that good, but it's like a morbid curiosity. I'm like, I need to see how this plays out, and that's Hogwarts Legacy. It's that new Harry Potter game they showed off that was running like it was running on a toaster, and that's like, I don't know what was going on there, but on paper it's what I'd wanted for a long time. All I wanted was like a full scale AAA open world Harry Potter game. This is about as close as it seems like we're gonna get to it, for at least for now, and so I'm curious to see how this goes from multiple angles. Obviously I'm curious to see if it is actually even good, how it runs, when it comes out, and obviously I'm really curious to see what that whole like J.K. Rowling controversy thing, like how that plays into the performance of this game, because that for me will be a litmus test telling me what the future of this franchise even looks like. Because obviously, and I won't get too much into it, but everybody knows calling her problematic is an understatement lately. And I'm just curious to see if her name being attached to this project in any capacity has any kind of like effect on the performance of this game. Because on paper, I mean, Harry Potter is one of WB's larger franchises that they even own. It's still a massive property. I mean, people are still talking about like, when is Fantastic Beasts 3 going to come out? So they still hold some weight in the culture. And so a video game where you can freely roam around Hogwarts on paper should be just a blockbuster. But we'll see if, there's any kind of notable backlash or boycott against this game. Again, it's a morbid curiosity that I'm just like, I want to see what this game turns into. So that's why I'm like really excited to see it come out. I'm probably going to get it unless there's any obvious signs beforehand that it's like this game's a stinker. Like Watch Dogs 3, also a stinker. But yeah, I got my eyes on it.
Yeah, I'm in a weird spot where, I still haven't seen all the Harry Potter movies. I'm one of those people.
Man, you gotta finish those.
I own them and stuff like that. I don't know what it is. And I enjoy Harry Potter. I think I like all about it and stuff like that. So, but I also know the impact it is in the world, like Harry Potter world down wherever, whatever Universal has that, whoever has that freaking ride and stuff like that. I understand what it is, so it is interesting that it's taken this long. This game's been rumored for a long time. Then we see it and it looks,
it's all right.
it looks like an early PS3 game,
It's like a game.
And I look into it and I just see like, okay, so it's definitely there, but who knows, maybe it's gonna be so content filled, I doubt it, but that we can pass on the graphics. I think the J.K. Rowling thing I think they're already doing damage control because they were confronted about it, I want to say immediately after the reveal, and the game director was like, oh, she's not really involved. From what I've seen and what I've been able to muster up on the internet and see, she has her hands in everything Harry Potter. She is super hands-on about it. When they did like the Harry Potter cookbook, she was super, apparently like really hard to work with because certain things, that's how she is. She's very protective of that IP. So as much as they want to deny it, maybe they'll put her under a pen name or a pseudonym. But she's obviously going to be very controlling of the story, which is apparently the biggest thing she has. So people were saying that she won't be. I'm curious as well to see because, I know she lost a lot of fans. A lot of people were really just over it with her, the way how she's, her views and her tweets and stuff like that. So I'm more curious on what this game does and how it is. I don't know if I'll buy it specifically. Yeah. Maybe those last Harry Potter movies will really convince me to get into it, but we'll have to wait and see, sadly.
Yeah, and I know this is not necessarily video game news, but I would want to say that, like, when I think about the future of Harry Potter, I think the best case scenario of, like, actually this universe being a thing in a real substantive manner going forward, they would have to Star Wars it. So they would have to buy her out and like keep her away from it. That's the only way, because obviously that control is one thing. But my vision for Harry Potter is if they could treat it like Star Wars and have different authors and different directors be able to tell stories all in this shared universe with like a central kind of controlling whoever force that is, kind of running things and making sure like a Dave Filoni type character, kind of just make sure everything kind of syncs up correctly in the Harry Potter universe, and just be able to have like some authors who want to tell like a more horror story, or somebody who wants to tell something more fun, some people who want to tell something in the Harry Potter continuity, other people want to talk about like the Deathly Hallows. Like there's different angles that they can take in this universe, but they're gonna have to like strong arm it away from her, because understandable, creators are protective of their IP, understandably so. And as long as she's associated with it, there's obviously they're gonna have to play damage control all the time, and that's gonna be a tough situation, because eventually some studios are just not gonna want to have to do that every single time. But it's such a big franchise that I don't see them just staying away from it, like walking away from such a cash cow. So again, it's a morbid curiosity I have for it.
Yeah, I guess we'll wait and see. Well, we'll hear from it maybe this year. I
would imagine.
I feel like that game's gonna get delayed out of this year and
they probably
fade into obscurity.
Vaporware.
Yeah. Next on the list, I wrote Sony Trinity, just because it's hard to. So and then I put like a semicolon, and I mean God of War Ragnarok. Whoa, my whole notes just disappeared. Horizon Forbidden West and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Yes, thank you for this, because I had those too.
Because I didn't want to, just because I know that those are exciting to listen. Just to sum up, these are going to be, sequels to some of the greatest games on PS4, and I can't wait for it. Again, God of War we don't know much about. Horizon looks fantastic from what we've seen, and Ratchet and Clank I think will probably be the closest one we get. I mean, that's the fastest one hopefully we're getting, because that game looks done. That game looks like
Oh,
finished.
yeah, it was very far along, yeah.
And it's been a while, so those 3 games I just can't wait for. I feel like they're sequels to some of the greatest stuff on PS4, and I can pretty confidently say they're probably going to be, unless they really botched it, it's confidently going to be like some of the stronger contenders on PS5. I know you're excited, I think, for all 3 as well.
Oh, no doubt, yeah.
Yeah,
and
so
this is going to be the one to start that momentum too, of the PlayStation domination.
Yeah.
If they're able to knock it out of the park with these 3 games, that's going to put them on a very similar trajectory that they were on to PlayStation 4. So this is going to be big.
The whole like 3 super strong IPs in 1 year had worked well for them in 2018. I think that's when it was like Spider-Man and God of War and something else. So if they can replicate that again this year, especially, PS5s will hopefully start getting into the hands of people more easily.
Sure.
I think it's going to be super, super strong and super great for them.
Yeah, and I mean, again, and I have no doubt that all 3 of these are going to absolutely dominate, and at least, if not all 3, at least 2 of those 3 are like bona fide system sellers.
Yeah.
That if anybody was on the fence, there are few games that can really, I feel like, push people to jump into a new console for just that game. Obviously, that's a Halo, that's a Mario, that's a Zelda. But now PlayStation's getting to a point where definitely God of War is too. And I could see after Horizon, just seeing those visuals, I could see a couple people, maybe less to so. And then for some people, Ratchet and Clank might be as well. So, this is going to really allow them to pull ahead of the pack. I don't know what the sales are looking like between the Series X and the PlayStation 5. And it doesn't really matter right now because so many people can't even get their hands on it. So we don't really even have an accurate gauge. Right now, they're selling as many as they can produce. It's not really telling us what the demand is for those. But this is going to really allow them to, as long as they can get consoles into people's hands, pull away from the pack and get that momentum in ahead to really dominate this generation if they so choose to, which obviously they're going to. So, yeah, man, I'm really, really excited to see what they do here. And theoretically, if they can maintain the pace that they did last gen with this gen, starting with this trilogy here,
yeah.
And you could say it starts with Miles, but I would say this trilogy is going to really allow them to get into their kind of like developer rotation, and maybe early 2022, maybe Sony Ben jumps into there and picks up the mantle from there. Forget about it. It's gonna be serious Sony season for yet another generation. So yeah, thank you for putting those all 3 together because I had those too.
Yeah, I didn't know how else to kind of take those on. I was like, well, I knew we both would have that on the list.
Yeah, so next one is one that people stopped talking about a long time ago because it got delayed for a bit, but it's something I still am very excited about, and that's Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. So I think people are kind of sleeping on this game in terms of its offerings, where it's like it's all 9 movies, like over 500 characters. This is the first time we're going to see the sequel trilogy completely made, because again, 7 got a Lego Star Wars game, but 8 and 9 didn't. So this is the first time we're going to be able to play, from episode 1 to episode 9, completely in Lego Star Wars. I haven't played in depth a Lego Star Wars game literally since the GameCube. Yes. So it's been a very long time. And for me, this is the perfect time for me to jump in. And just to be able to play all these games on next-gen hardware, it's going to look so beautiful. And again, they're going to have to remake it because, again, the last time I played Lego Star Wars, when you're playing 2-player and one person runs off and they have that really cool way of, like, splitting the screen and then combining the screen? That didn't even exist back then. So that's how long it's been since the last time I've played a Lego Star Wars. So I'm super, super hyped to jump into these games. And again, people are not really talking about it. It got pushed. It was supposed to, I don't know if they had a formal date, but it was rumored for a long time to come out in October. And obviously, I'm sure COVID played a role with pushing that off. So right now, it's, I believe, either Q1 or Q2, spring maybe, 2021. It's supposed to be in the first half for sure. Hopefully, they're able to meet with that. But TT or Traveler's Tales, I don't know exactly what they go by these days, always seem to deliver with these Lego experiences. So I'm really excited to jump into it. I know you've dabbled in the Lego games before.
Yeah, I've been on and off. I played a ton of it when the original Lego Star Wars games came out, especially when they did the complete saga. The complete saga. Thank you. That's the one I spent the most time in because I remember playing the original trilogy and then the other one separate. When they came, like, the complete saga, I played a ton of it. it was fun. Those games are always bare minimum good. I dabbled very lightly in some of the Marvel ones. I didn't play like Indiana Jones because
that's what I was about to say. Lego Indiana Jones.
Lego Pirates of the Caribbean isn't really my thing. Lego, I think they did Jurassic Park and Lord of the Rings. I think they did Harry Potter as well. They did everything. Obviously WB and then are in bed. They did some DC ones and stuff. Star Wars, obviously. Despite what you think of the movie, I like all the movies. I don't love them all. It varies. That's a whole nother conversation. But I think, it's been so long since I've played a Lego Star Wars game. Like, you're looking at over 10 years, I want to say, since I played one. I think it will be pretty interesting to go back and play through the whole, what is now known as the Skywalker Saga, from 1 to 9 in Lego form. My wife will probably be able to jump in and out just to kind of, I think it'll be interesting. I can't wait to see some of these, they always pull these obscure characters like, Bartender Number 1, and then you can play as him in the games and stuff like that. I dabbled, I think, in the demo of Episode 7, and they really changed some of the stuff. Like, there were some over-the-shoulder sort of, like, cover-based systems that was implemented, so I wonder how much they were able to reformat the older stuff, because it looks completely remade from what I'm seeing. It's not just a port of the complete saga and then with the 3 sequel sagas added on. So I'm interested in it. It's definitely, I was hoping it was coming out this year, because I thought it just seems like a kind of Christmas game where it's like, I've got days off from work, why not plug that in and just knock out 2 movies real quick.
Yeah, the delay of this game actually did kind of surprise me. Again, not that it's really quality stuff, so it's not like I'm saying like it's easy to make these games. But from what they were showing of it, and the fact that they're not starting necessarily from zero. Now, I understand that they can't just port over, because we're talking about pretty old games now. They're on the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, when they first started with that original trilogy, and they haven't remade them since. And with the complete saga, I think the last time that came out was like PS3 maybe, or something like that.
I want to say maybe they ported it to 360 and PS3.
Yeah. Then they did like Lego Star Wars 3, like the Clone Wars. Like they've tapped into it. So, but they've never like remade them. But at the same time, that infrastructure stays there. So that tells me if they're pushing it off, first off, they're maintaining a high level of quality, and also I'm hoping that you get a pretty seamless experience from episode 1 to 9 in terms of quality. And I can't wait to see some of the crazier visual stuff that happened in 8 and 9, especially in Lego Star Wars, that we've never gotten to see before. So I'm really hyped about that. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but I feel like that might be something once it comes out, everybody's like, oh crap, a new Lego Star Wars with everything in it. Yes.
Yeah,
that's what's going to change things for people.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. So the last one I have on my list, and again, there's so many games coming out in 2021. We could go on for hours, but I try to get more of the staple ones. Because I had like Neo, The World Ends With You on here, but that's still fairly new announcement, stuff like that. But the last one that I think a lot of people are anticipating, just because of the nature of what happened, Halo Infinite, obviously is how I'm gonna bring this one home. The game delayed a year after its original launch. It's missing the launch of the Xbox Series X and S, and obviously the game was not shown in the greatest states. A lot of pop-ins, a lot of bland moments, a lot of bland textures. There's that one brute, they gave him a name. Oh, Craig the Brute was his facial animations was wonky. I think hopefully within a whole year is probably way more than, essentially they were ready to launch this game in the fall, so I can only imagine what a year's worth of extra work can do to really polish this game, especially running it on older software, because as much as I wish they would abandon it on Xbox One, it's obviously not going to happen, and that's probably what's really causing these problems, especially now we're learning from CD Projekt Red what some of this stuff is. So we'll have to really wait and see, but this is a soft reboot almost to Halo. That's why they didn't call it Halo 6 for a reason. They're calling it Halo Infinite. The way they're going to move the multiplayer is going to be a free-to-play sort of aspect. The opening of the structures of the campaign with a little bit more open world stuff. It's obviously what they want. They want a refresh Halo to the new community, to the old community, to gain some of those hardcore players back and things like that. So I'm excited because this is either going to be the rebirth or the death of Halo. And I would like it to be the former. But we'll see what happens. What do you think? Because I know you were expecting to play this game this past fall.
Yeah, I mean this game is scaring me to death, to be honest with you. Like I didn't expect this game got pushed off like serious. Like this is like the end of 2021 type game, and just for it to be pushed off that much tells me that this game is in trouble. And again, we've already spoken about how important this game is to get right for them. One thing that is slightly disappointing to me, the fact that I'm sure this game will be really, really solid, but it cannot and definitely won't be a native Series X game. It's going to be an Xbox One game that upscales into Series X just because of performance. They've had this kind of unified platform thing, which means that you'll be able to play this game for every console and stuff like that, which means that at its core root, it has to appeal to that kind of lowest common denominator, which is going to be that kind of base Xbox One. And I don't think it's possible to make a game that fully takes advantage of the Series X hardware and simultaneously has a version that can scale down the same game to the base Xbox One. I just don't think that exists. I know it's going to have variable refresh rates, and obviously the resolution is going to shift. Base Xbox, I think, can do 1080p now. I know it did 900 back in the day. I think it can do 1080 now. So it's going to do probably, 1080 30 or something like that. And then maybe on the modern consoles, they'll do like 4K 60 or something like that. Or the Series X, it'll do like 4K 60 or something like that. But I feel like some of the crazier technical things that the next gen hardware is going to do, this game probably just cannot take advantage of because of the fact that it needs to be able to play everything. And that is the problem I have with Microsoft's strategy of play anything anywhere, is that when you can play anything anywhere, you got to make sure it runs on the weakest piece of hardware first and foremost. And there's just that limits gaming. And that's kind of what PC players have been talking about for years, about like consoles holding gaming back. Well, this is like holding gaming back even further by having to appeal to consoles that came out in 2013 and 2020. And so that is one of the things that kind of disappoint me the most about this Halo game, is I know it's going to be some major reboot and expansion in the biggest game, but at the same time, I know it cannot be this fundamentally next-gen experience because it's going to be played en masse by millions of people on last-gen hardware. So it's like, I'm going to get a better frame rate. I'm sure I'm going to get a better resolution, but that's the end of things there. It's not going to do anything with like AI or the engine or the anything with the physics that last gen couldn't do, which is unfortunate because I really want to see Halo take it to the next level in terms of what these consoles can really output in terms of like worlds. And that's one thing we haven't been able to see, is what can the Series X do with an open world that previous gens can't do with just this massive amount of power. And it's going to be a number of years before they fully take advantage of that. So it's a game that I'm very, very, very excited for, especially for that's going to be the one game I feel like that can finally be that Xbox game I've been waiting for. But at the same time, I have to temper my expectations because I know that there are natural limitations of what they're even able to supply for us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So the last one I have, and it's, compared to the Halo one, it's kind of a weird place to end off. But I chose Kena Bridge of Spirits. Now, this is something that was announced at a PlayStation show, the PlayStation 5 show, sometime back. And immediately when I saw it, I was like fascinated by it. I'm like, it's beautiful. And my mind kind of confused it a little bit for a while because there's been a number of games I feel like had similar vibes to them. Specifically like Spiritfarer when that came out. And then there was another game, I forget the name of it, but it's like a archery game. And you kind of play around, and it has like a similar art style of like this kind of foresty spirit vibe. A number of different games are kind of tapping into that energy right now. But this one very particularly, I feel like, and I hate to keep comparing games to this game, but this one also has that Breath of the Wild spirit in it. But I feel like in less of an Immortals, like I'm literally taking from that format, and more of like that kind of animal spirit in the forest, playing around, action exploration vibe that I'm really excited for. And it's a proper PS5 game, so I'm really excited to jump into that. Not a lot of people are talking about that, but I feel like this is going to be a sleeper hit that is going to be kind of like a little low-key, maybe a little bit more artsy vibe that people talk about on the next-gen consoles, similar to like maybe like a Rhyme, for example, when that came out, that not a lot of people were talking about it beforehand, but then it came out, it's like, oh man, this is actually pretty dope. So this is something I have my eye on and not a lot of people are talking about, but I just wanted to kind of include there to maybe one or two people who watch the show might have their eyes on it now that you weren't paying attention to it before. So
yeah, I do remember seeing this back at that conference, and I was always excited for it. It looked interesting. I liked everything I saw. It obviously is going for more of that artistic vibe for it, and I think it has a place. I think it'll have a place. I think it will resonate when it comes out. Like you said, it's gonna be one of those games that just goes, it's quiet until release, and then some reason it just blows up. And hopefully they're successful. I'm trying to think of what company's making that. It doesn't even say here, but
yeah, I can't remember.
But yeah, it's interesting. I think it was originally planned for 2020. They delayed it and stuff like that. But I think it's gonna be. I'm excited because the game looked absolutely gorgeous. I had a friend who doesn't play games like that, and he was asking me about it. So it's exciting to see, and I'm glad it's gonna hopefully get the respect it deserves.
Yeah, and I'm just so excited to see, because obviously we're gonna get these absolute powerhouse games on next gen, especially this year. I guess I'm used to saying next year, but 2021 this year. But I'm super excited to see what indie devs are able to do with their hands on these consoles, because what indie meant during the 360 era obviously changes from generation to generation. I'm just so excited to see what that means on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. What it means to be an indie developer, and what are you able to actually do, and what power you're able to extract, and how does that help their artistry and stuff like that. Because obviously with indie games, they're not always hardware pushers, but they do really, really creative things with the power given to them that even some AAA developers don't really take full advantage of to be able to tell certain types of stories. So this is a game example of like something that you wouldn't see from a lot of AAA developers and stuff like that I think is going to be a really creative use of the power that is given to them on these, I guess, technically current gen devices, but what we would, I guess, consider next gen, since so many people don't have the devices yet. So yeah, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's our 2021 games, guys. I hope you are as excited for this year as we are. I know it's going to be an absolute juggernaut. And again, as we said last year, this is probably going to be the first year in a while that we'll be able to see all three of them properly compete. The Nintendo is well into their life cycle at this point. They know exactly top to bottom what that device does. And obviously PlayStation and Xbox finally got the hardware refresh they all wanted for quite a while now. And Microsoft hopefully is able to do a little bit of catch up and start putting out some first party stuff to properly compete this year. So I'm really, really excited to see what this generation holds. And you know what? I'm not going to take a shot at VCS at the end of this show like I normally do. But you best believe episode 38 next week, we'll be right back on it. So this was the NeoVintage podcast. I am Jabrell, and I am with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.